Alex and Eric from Corumdale Farm. It is the last week of December, so we thought this was the perfect time and the wisest time to sit down and discuss our first year flower farming in Oklahoma. We started making videos in February, which is when we closed on our house, and we have tracked in video form our progression this first year, trying to start a flower farm on our new property on 2.5 acres. And we thought it would be helpful to go through how that first year went, a lot of the things we learned, the good and the bad, and then in a future video, we'll talk about our 2023 plans. So like I mentioned, in February, we came to close on the house, and we were able to see the property in person for the first time, really. And, well, no, second time, technically.
We bought the home sight unseen.
No, we didn't. We saw the house in November. But we owned the home and could actually...
Internet order.
Internet
I'd
order.
like a home, please.
Add to cart. Check
Amazon
out.
Prime.
Shop pay. But during that February closing, we laid out the silage tarps for the flower field in the backyard and the raised bed garden in the front. And during that time, we also filmed a video, which was basically like our whole plans for the year, our goal to-do list. And after reviewing that video, we checked off everything on that goal list, which was really exciting. So we had the 2 fields in the backyard we made and grew on. We built our large, massive, fancy raised garden in the front yard. We expanded it.
We
expanded it bigger. That's right. When we got out there, I was like, what's another 7 feet longer?
We went from like 32 by 40. No, it was like 28 by 40.
It was 28 by 40. We went to like
32 by 45.
Oh, okay. Yes, more space.
We just hit the bonus button. Just
yeah. And then we also planted 8 fruit trees around the property. We planted 100 or so peonies. We are building the flower cottage, which we're sitting in right now. We shifted from a pole barn to a flower cottage for a lot of reasons, but I'm really excited we did that. And we even added some things because we got so extra ambitious. We added a fully planted perennial garden in May, and then we expanded to a second one on the south end of the raised garden in October, which we're excited to see bloom for the first time next spring. So we got everything done on our checklist, which was wonderful. It was ambitious.
We were going to have a pilot growing field.
Yeah.
We were going to do the raised garden.
Yes. Check, check.
And planting some peonies.
Check.
Along our fence and some trees.
Yeah.
Those were the main goals. We added...
Oh, and the daffodils. We even planted the daffodils in the front.
That's true. So that was 5 things.
So 5 things. And we added the 2 perennial gardens.
2 perennial gardens, the instant gardens.
The instant gardens, the free gardens.
We planted a couple more trees.
Yes.
And we actually just went ahead and invested in the cottage here, the cabin build.
Yeah.
Instead of building it from scratch, I bought the design to be delivered, and then I've been finishing it, which I'm super happy.
You can see the fancy walls behind me.
Super happy we went with the pre-built that I finished, because it's a lot of work to just finish the interior, although we're doing some kind of Gucci.
It's Gucci inside.
Gucci stuff.
But I'm excited.
But I didn't want to drywall, and that's why I didn't.
So I got fancy wall paneling instead of drywall.
We got probably more expensive, but I don't know how to mud, and we didn't want to paint, so...
It would have been awful to do that and have it be like just slightly off. And feel like you're living in a...
I would see the seams forever.
Right, exactly.
So I purposely picked the rough wall.
Right.
In order to hide imperfections, because it kind of is, the point of it is it to be imperfect. So, but yeah, we got this.
Yeah.
Almost done. We need floors and the shelving.
It'll be done in January, and I can get seed starting for the next year. So it'll be exciting.
And what else did we add? We added something else, I thought.
No.
I mean, we built the deluxe fire pit area.
Oh yeah, we added the fire pit area, which was totally your vision, which was perfect. So all that to say is we met our ambitious checklist goals, which was super exciting. And we even in all of that got to the point where we were selling flowers. That was kind of a little bit up in the air. We went into it thinking, at least I did mentally, I was going to be planting a lot of flowers in order to learn the area, but I was still a bit unsure on what would even happen, how well I would do. And so I didn't want to lead with, I'm going to do all of these sales and promote all of that ahead of time until I actually had flowers. But when it came to be July and we had so many flowers, Eric was like, you need to be selling these. Why are you not selling them? And so in July at that point, when we checked everything on our list, we pivoted to then the actual sales process and not just learning and trialing and setting up infrastructure.
You never planned to sell this first year?
I mean,
I know you talked about it being a big pilot year.
My emotional heart wanted to, but I wanted to set my expectations low. If I failed in growing, I wasn't like also embarrassed and disappointed that I wasn't able to like sell as well. So when things looked really awesome in July and we like pivoted within a week to be set up to be selling bouquets, and then it shifted to like, I can do this, the flowers look wonderful, let's see how much we can sell. That was kind of the pivot point in July, which was really exciting. So we sold July, August, September, and a bit in October, and then we had a mid-October like killing freeze, and it was an abrupt end at that point.
A killing infestation of cucumber beetles and then a killing freeze.
Yeah, it was just done.
Hold on. Yeah, to clarify, this isn't our first year. We're going to call it the year in review.
I know, but everyone understands what we're talking about. No one assumes like you're starting a flower farm, so it's like you're going to start like March 1st. Okay, well, I'm glad.
She doesn't agree with me.
I'm glad we have this fully on.
But we need to figure this out on film.
This is wonderful.
Is this year 1 or year 2?
This is year 1. We have just finished year 1.
Half.
Year half.
I'll forever have this argument now.
In 5 years, I'll be like, oh yeah, this is our
year 5 will be like 4
and then
and a half.
In the field, Eric's like 4.5.
Exactly. Year 5 will be year 4.5, and you'll just be like, nope, year 5, and I'll say
like
4.5.
It's Harry Potter. It's like platform 9 3/4.
That exactly.
Okay, so the next question is what we learned about our growing climate, because obviously we moved here in February. Well, we moved here technically in March. So we were able to experience spring, summer, fall. We're now experiencing winter for the first time. But we didn't know very much winter. Yeah, very much winter. Arctic blast. We didn't know that much about Oklahoma aside from just like the research you can do, but obviously you learn infinitely more by actually experiencing it and trying to grow things in it yourself and not just like the internet says. And so I think it's helpful to talk about the challenges we experienced, but then also the positives that came out of it. So the first category I had is the seasons and how, for whatever reason, Northeast Oklahoma broke weather records in every single season that we've lived here. So all 4 seasons so far has had record-breaking weather.
They weren't technically all record-breaking. They just haven't happened in a very long time in all cases.
Oh, okay. Well, some of them
like we apparently
truly record
had
broke.
A drought similar to the drought that brought on the Dust Bowl.
Perfect.
So technically we didn't actually turn into the Dust Bowl.
So win for Oklahoma.
But it had been a very long time since.
But like, let's start with spring. So in spring, we had like the windiest May on record in May. June, we had the wettest June on record. We were practically floating away some weeks. We had so much water.
We should
look it up. I mean, it was like
26 inches.
It was crazy. We were like, oh my gosh. But then that gave us a false sense of security because in June
10th.
What?
That just stopped raining.
Oh yeah, like the second week of June, it stopped raining and it did not rain again until like Labor Day weekend. So we had this full false sense of like, everything's green, everything's magical. There's rain every 3 days. This is crazy. Why are we setting up irrigation? And then it was like, some like Muppet Treasure Island where it's like, doo-doo, and then like a tumbleweed goes by.
Turn the
spigots. And there was no rain. Then in summer, like you mentioned, in July and August, we had like an incredible drought of like no rain, but not just that. If you remember, it just came to mind. July had a record amount of triple-digit days. Yeah. You remember? And it was like half of the month was over 100. Whereas if you even look back like the last 3-4 years, it was like a couple days in the hundreds.
Usually late July and the first 2 weeks of August were always where you would probably get a string of 100+ degree days, but we had it.
Yeah, so we broke
very early July all the way through. Actually, August ended up being super mild.
Compared to July, yeah.
No, it was actually like in the mid 80s a lot.
Right.
It was super
But I'm saying
nice.
like July was the record-breaking month. And then in the fall, we broke records on the frost. So the killing freeze we had, it was like October 14th or something, but it was like 24 degrees or something as the first frost. Like it wasn't even like things are gonna get a little like frosty and icy. It was just like things are now all dead. Like even the perennials, it murdered everything. And then of course it just like went back up to not freezing for another 4 weeks after that. So that broke the frost record in October. And then we just hit the cutoff where it was officially winter last week. And the Arctic blast hit us, and we had like the lowest December temperature in years.
Everybody's. I mean, this is the whole country is dealing with this ice whip.
Yeah, no, it's not like Oklahoma is this like super unique land, but it's just ironic that we moved here in just every single season. So of course you're talking to all the locals.
It's been pretty extreme feeling.
But you talk to all the locals and they're just this trope of like, it's not normally this windy, it's not normally this wet, it's not normally this hot, it's not normally this cold. And you're like, for your first year here. So hopefully next year's a little more like average rain, average summer temperatures.
Yeah, it does. Clearly though, I mean, we know it dries off. Like we're now fully aware that once the spring season recedes,
in June, not to be tricked,
typically really dries up. Even historically, July's rainfall amounts are only a few inches.
Yeah,
they're not zero, which is what it was this year. But when you look at kind of like 10 years, 20 years of data online, you see that July and August are typically pretty low key. There's like a burst of thunderstorms usually beginning in July, end of July,
season,
kind of like. They roll through. We got none of those this year. There was nothing, no relief at all.
So our lesson is don't be tricked by the early June rain because it's about to get really dry.
Yeah, this is not a place you can probably grow stuff through the summer without irrigation. But spring flowers
don't need it.
Don't need anything.
And I do remember in early May, we planted out the raised garden, end of April, early May. And I think maybe twice I had the hose out in May because of rain. So that was nice, but then it became like watering every single night in July and August because we just weren't getting any sky water.
Sky water. Great sky waters.
The great sky waters did not come in the Oklahoma prairie. Yeah.
Christian farm.
Yeah. So the last category in the like what we had to learn here in our first year was our soil. Like what could we actually, if we had proper irrigation and we kind of managed the bugs, how were things going to do in our soil? And we have predominantly clay, but it's technically a sandy clay loam. So it's not like heavy clay. I couldn't make like a clay mold out of it. It's crumbly enough, but it definitely holds its water. There's definitely low points on the farm where it just really stays soggy and mucky.
I mean, soil's not going to be the issue here. It's clear the bugs. Weeds aren't even an issue here because of how we do our growing.
Yeah, the landscape fabric, we didn't have to weed.
Landscape fabric and holes. It's like that's how we'll beat back, Bermuda grass growing and outcompeting flowers. We're not trying to grow bare soil. And it just, I think maybe year 3 to 5 in some of our growing fields, we probably don't have to.
As long as we silage tarp during the non-growing season.
Well, I mean, we plan to try to do cover crops and improve soil health that way and not just constantly import compost. But, if we have a profitable flower business, it might just be that we just pay the bill to get the compost delivered.
Right. But thankfully,
we had spent all that money on compost and put it in the raised garden, and then we had none left for the field. So we had like a few black cow manure bags.
Yeah, so we were like, let's just do this.
Sprinkled a little of that over it.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be interesting because we're moving to a different part of our field
we need to do that soil test to see if it's
it's going to be the same. It's just like there's clearly some nutrients back there it got for a particular reason that this area up here won't. So we're probably going to kickstart it
with some compost.
With probably a full dump truck of compost this year. sprinkle over the rows. And
yeah, so basically we didn't run into soil issues, and that was really nice.
And most people here will say that. They'll say like the soil here isn't really a problem. Like the clay soil is not really a big deal.
It's not like the red clay in OKC, for example. Like that's a very different soil than what we have in the northeast of Oklahoma. So that's nice. So that's a positive. It's just we kind of need to do like the general taking care of your soil steps that you would do without a lot of like excessive effort. So it's a positive. I'm glad.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's good to not have amongst the environmental challenges in a harsher growing environment here.
Because some people's clay is just like so heavy they can only do raised beds. And like obviously that becomes a much higher cost and maintenance point. We're not Iowa soil, yeah.
Giant Kenyan loam,
yeah,
down
the perfect Iowa soil.
Some of these ancient river deltas.
Yeah.
But I don't think, I mean, definitely hard. It's really, I think it's more about drought and bugs here than it is about.
Yeah.
Than it is about the soil itself. That's going to get in our way.
So that was good. Yeah. So the next question I had, well, you had phrased it this way. Do flowers grow in Oklahoma? And the answer is yes. Flowers can grow in Oklahoma, but we're continuing to learn which ones just love Oklahoma. They're fine with the soil. They are loving the heat and are not fussy. And then other ones are like, I will grow, but you need to spend all your time and attention on me to get me to grow. And those are the kind of flowers that I just don't think are going to win out here because of our time constraints and prioritizing efficiency and time. So I wanted to say my top 5 flowers from this year that we grew, that I didn't think of it as like what were my favorite flowers or what were the most like absolutely beautiful, but which ones just produced stems all summer with the least amount of fuss. So they weren't as affected by the bugs, they never got any disease, and they just gave me flowers after flowers after flowers and weren't dramatic. And so sunflowers did great. Towards the end, the cucumber beetles loved the sunflowers, so the leaves and stuff looked like Swiss cheese, but because you can harvest sunflowers like right as they're just opening, I was able to cut the flowers and bring them in and let them open up their faces inside away from the bugs. So I didn't actually have damage. So even though the plants themselves just like looked awful and I hated having to like wipe off all the bugs and stuff, the flowers themselves were still really beautiful. So, but what I also learned for myself and my own learning growth is that, and this makes sense, in March, April, and early May, like all I really had to do was do seedlings. So I was like seeing them every day. I was babying them. They had my full focus. But then once things were all planted out in May and June, and that was where my focus was, the seedlings, the succession seedlings for the sunflowers that were inside in July and stuff were like last on my pay attention to list. And I think that's why they ended up being not as good, because I wasn't realizing the errors I was making until it was like too late in September. I realized like, oh, these are why they're not doing so well. So I need to do a better job just from a discipline standpoint next year of giving them my attention so that they're strong seedlings when they go out, or then I'm kind of wasting my time all around. So
you did make me think of the one area of soil stuff that is something we have to work on.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. Yeah.
And it's, since this is my first time doing this and understanding it, and you watch videos and you read stuff and it talks about, the seed bed, not the seed bed, the bed prep. And you want a nice, smooth, even layer. But because we didn't introduce any compost or
finer,
anything, it was very clumpy and bumpy and uneven. So if we're planting into the holes in the fabric, some of them the soil would be right there at the surface, and then some would be 2 inches down, and that was a big issue. And now I'm realizing like to try to create a very smooth planting bed is super important. Yeah. And I think I was really scared.
And that'll make planting easier because we're not having to like dig down really deep and.
Yeah. So I mean, that is some area where it's like the nutrient and the like rooting into the clay soil isn't really an issue, but it is difficult to work with clay soil to create a
with seedlings and stuff,
smooth bed for delicate plants. Like it would probably work for hardier, bigger plants.
Which is why we might end up investing in that like 2-inch compost on top to get it flat so that it makes it easier to transplant seedlings. And then once they're roots hit native soil, they're fine, but it made it easier for us on top.
For you to plant into.
Yeah.
It's just a much smoother, flat surface, and then of course, over the next ensuing years, like we're just going to keep working on those rows.
And with the cover cropping, like it will continue to get floofier.
And we'll probably spend a lot of time with like, we're not worrying about walking paths because like those don't need to get the compost investment. So it's like you're just working at like over time, like your planting rows become very. I just know a lot of people out there are very precise. They've put down the chalk line almost to like snapping in their exact lines, and then it's a very particular method for like broad fork and no-till and putting the compost on top and wood chips in the aisles and all this stuff.
Yeah,
and
so hopefully that becomes.
We do want to develop that exact science.
I do.
And unfortunately, we're going to go back to year 1 because we've entirely moved the fields.
Yeah, but
so it will be head knowledge year-ish 1.5. But the soil won't have had any. It's all fresh prairie that we're going to be.
So in patience, we'll get there. So the next flower on my top 5 was celosia. It absolutely loves the heat. So when I planted it out in May, they stayed really small for a long time, and I think at one point you even were like, are these all dead? Like, we planted these 3 weeks ago and they were like this high. Like, what is happening? And then July hit and they exploded, and by the end of the year some of the varieties were taller than me. No bug damage, no stress, just tons of filler.
I can even picture what a celosia is at this point, so we've made great progress.
Oh my gosh, see, good job.
I can learn what some of these plants are.
So there was celosia, and then gomphrena. Gomphrena was puffballs. Puffballs. Gomphrena was a pain for me to harvest. I didn't really love that, but I think it was perfect in the bouquets. It had no bug damage. The pollinators loved it. It looked really awesome in the row because it was so much bloomed out color. The heat didn't bother it at all. Like it just
heat accelerated.
Yeah, I spent no time thinking about babying the gomphrena. I just harvested it when I could and knew that it was going to take me longer to harvest. So I'm definitely going to grow it again, and I'm going to grow different colors. I grew a bubblegum pink and a white mix. I rarely ever picked the white because by the time it was blooming, it was like July and August, and my customers wanted like the bold, bright, punchy colors, and so the like off-white didn't really work. So I'm going to plant orange, red, and fuchsia this next year, and I think that'll go great with the summer colors. The fourth one was basil. I planted a cinnamon basil, so it was a purple flower and then a purple and green, not variegated, but like two-tone leaf. I succession planted it, and basil became like my go-to filler. The bouquets all had like 2 or 3 stems in it. I loved the smell. It was not a drama llama at all. The cucumber beetles started to get to it.
Are you allowed to say drama llama on a official?
I think so. It's a technical term. No drama llamas. But I really loved it. Next year I'm going to grow a couple more varieties of basil for different colors and scents and stuff. But the basil I loved as a filler. And then lastly, marigolds were like the star save my hiney of fall, because when the cucumber beetles arrived and were really destroying my zinnias and I was having a much harder time finding bug damage free stems, my marigolds were like 3 rows over, completely unaffected, sending out awesome orange and yellow blooms, and they actually took over as the star of my bouquets instead of the zinnias. So I'm going to plant like an entire 30-foot row next year of different color marigolds, because they were so helpful in the fall and the colors were so punchy, I don't know what the right word, saturated looking in the bouquets, that although I hope to have more zinnias in the fall, because the cucumber beetles didn't care about them as much, I feel like I need even more of them. And they weren't like the dinky small bedding plant size marigolds that you think of. They were like zinnia size, big puffball flowers that were really unique that most people don't have in their gardens. So that's my top 5 of drama llama free flowers.
Did you even put zinnia in your top 5?
I didn't put zinnia in my top 5 because they were drama llamas to me because of the cucumber beetles.
But that was like at the last mile of the...
That's true. Maybe that's me being unfair to the zinnia.
They were the reason you probably sold
so many flowers. Okay, I love zinnias. I'm growing like 5 30-foot rows next year of zinnias.
Because they will be your top flower.
Yes.
in the summer.
Yes.
If we saw.
I just was so frustrated that they were coming into their prime right when they were all getting destroyed. And so I just basically watched them die a slow death, that I didn't pick them because I felt like I didn't get to use them to their max potential. But next year...
But objectively speaking, if you were to assess the number of bouquets you sold
zinnias.
in August...
Zinnias.
Was zinnias.
Yeah.
Was zinnia...
Because I had the big
zinnia
big
in your
ones.
first round of sunflowers.
Yeah, those were like... I really peaked early is what you're telling me. So we'll do better with the zinnias, and they definitely will be stars next year for sure. Yeah. And then my shorter category of like flowers I'm not going to grow again next year are dahlias. I probably will put some dahlias in the raised garden for like personal enjoyment because I do love that flower, but planted in mass with the goal of putting them in bouquets, I'm not gonna do. I think the drought heat level really stunted and stalled them through July and August. And then by the time September and October came around, they were trying to catch up and they were sending out like pretty lame blooms. And then those blooms had to be covered in a mesh bag or else the cucumber beetles, I think I have a picture I'll send to you. It was disgusting. Like they just were getting obliterated by the cucumber beetles. And so it's just the amount that the tuber costs and the fact that it took 5 months to get that bloom, not worth it for selling. But I'll probably pop some in the raised garden to baby a bit so that I can maybe enjoy a couple. But for flower farming,
and watch, you're gonna have like perfect dahlia growing conditions.
I know, and I'm gonna be jealous of everyone else that like pushed through.
Yeah, they'll just have like,
I know.
They're
But they're so expensive now. They're like the price because more and more people are finding out about dahlias and more people are wanting to grow them. Yeah, but they're... Oh, and then we had a bunch of disease. Remember when we dug up the tubers, they were all like diseased and the cross... It just was like, yes, you can grow dahlias in Oklahoma, but you can't grow them like you see like Washington and Oregon and Michigan and Ohio, like those places growing dahlias. It's just, it's apples to oranges. And because I had like my top 5 flowers and I had other things that were growing, like I'd rather grow stuff that just gives me a ton of output and I can just have wonderful bouquets for people than like suffering through a flower that doesn't really want to be here so that I can look like other farms in different regions of the country. Just doesn't seem like a great choice. And then one thing we did learn is cosmos, we need to net them next year because they grow really tall and they grow really long leg arms. And then we had some crazy Oklahoma windstorms and they just like splayed, and we tried to like lash them back up and stuff, and they never really... I'm gonna grow them next year, but I'm definitely gonna put them in a row with some netting so that I don't lose all that effort in like one storm. We got like one storm in July and August, and they were just like, I think we have the video of just like the wind whipping through. If I want to do cosmos and I commit to them, they need netting, or else they just like crack and fall everywhere. So that was learned. Because our zinnias had netting, so they didn't really suffer too much. Last category really is how we ended up selling those flowers. When I said that in July things were going really well and looked beautiful, and we pivoted and we're like, let's try to sell flowers. Eric, I sent him some inspo pictures of like, these are what some roadside stands look like. Can we do something similar? And then Eric took that and had a really smart idea to build the floor of the stand with a pallet so that we could use the pallet forks on the tractor to move it up to the road and position it how we wanted. And then now that the season's over, he was able to pick it up. It's parked here behind the shed and covered in a tarp. And that was a really convenient way to move it because it was all wood. It was really heavy. We would have either had to have had it permanently live up there. And another reason that was good for that is we had it on the right side of the road at one point, but then when the sun angle changed later in the summer, it was getting too hot directly in it, and so then we were able to just pop it onto the other side of our driveway super easy with the tractor. So that design, I think, was super smart. And the size of it, I think, was great for the amount of flowers we were selling each day that it was open. I think maybe in the future, as we continue to grow, we'll have to rethink the space because it might fill up more quickly, especially if we're only open like 2 or 3 days a week. And so we're putting out much more flowers a few times a week. We might have to rethink it. But I loved the roadside stand. We live on a country road that is used a good amount. It's between two highways, and I think people choose our road often to like make that connection. And the house is fairly close to the road where people can see our big raised garden. I think there's a lot of interest in what's going on, and people visually have been super interested. So to put a roadside stand out there, we're not asking people to drive down like a half-mile dirt road in Oklahoma, which I think culturally people here would not do, because people here are very big on privacy and boundaries, and there's not a lot of like, I'm gonna go explore randomly down places that might not be mine. So I think it's very convenient at how visual we are.
We just obviously were pouring a lot of money into capital, and thankfully the Lord has given us the military pension and a job and all that stuff, but at some point we were just kind of like, I don't want to spend much more this year.
It's like big roadside structure.
Yeah, which we do want. I mean, if we're going to be anything serious, it's going to be more significant, because we have we'd like it to be a come to us enterprise, so I don't have to do logistics of shipping, and plus since I'm fully employed full time, like we don't have the bandwidth that needs to be a product and an ease that people can come and get what they want.
Right.
We got some cool ideas for what it might be here. Probably year 3, but who knows? Maybe we'll just get ambitious.
You mean
next
year
year.
2.5?
Year 2.5, 2.5. But we'll probably start with the roadside stand for now. But I mean, it'll be a challenge because it's not that big.
It's not that big, so we'll have to see. We might even have to like pivot.
Maybe to some sort of climate control to chill the flowers.
Well, that would allow us to be open for more flexible hours for people.
But it was a stopgap. They built cheap. I mean, we had a pallet.
You built it in like 2 days.
My neighbor has a lumber mill, and he had a bunch of cedar scrap pieces of wood.
Awesome.
And I was able to throw together with very limited parts better than just setting it out on a table.
It was cute. It was well constructed. It was easy to maneuver, and people recognized like it was a roadside stand. It wasn't just like a card table with a tent over it that looked like, am I going to...
You would often see people driving by, and they would stop, and you would see them like looking at their window and looking back at...
To see if there was stock.
There was any stock.
Yeah.
Which was fun to watch people do that.
So
it'd be good to just make it as convenient as possible for people as time goes on. That way you don't have to like calculate hours and times and like what's the best.
That was part of the problem, and you run into this as you're a first-time business and people are trying to get used to you. And so I committed to basically having the stand open every day but Sunday in the afternoons, so that I made flowers available as convenient as possible for people. But that also meant that like my labor wasn't the most efficient, because I was harvesting, processing, making bouquets every single day, which was hard. And then there were also, it was becoming clear the days that were like really popular and the days that were a lot slower, but I was still trying to make flowers in case like that person you said was driving by and I could like grab them, and then maybe they would be a continuing customer for us. But my hope is maybe next year, because we'll be a little more established and we'll have return customers, to have like 3 days we're open a week with more flowers, and then I'm doing that work 3 days a week instead of 6 days a week, and I can move more flowers on less days. But then it's kind of like you go full circle, where if we continue to be successful there and we increase more customers, we would have the capital then to build a bigger roadside stand that's climate controlled, that can then go back to being open more, but we're selling a lot more
next year is year 1.5. So we've got meet your goals, but I mean, this is brand new, so we got to figure it out. And I think we have a great plan as with drive-through flowers. That'll just be, people can
super
peel off
convenient.
The road. We have the great thing about our property layout is that it's got a lot of street frontage.
But also everything on our property is pushed towards the front, or it's going to be pushed towards the front next year. So everything's gonna be super visible. So because, like I said, people drive the street a lot, I'm hoping it's just basically marketing all the time, and people are super interested, instead of like hiding everything in the house, like behind our house, and people like trying to get a little hint, but then they see the flower stand. It's like they're going to be able to see rows and rows of flowers, and like, this is a flower farm, this is the flower stand. And that would also just increase naturally people that are curious, and And last but not least, we got really great customer feedback.
Yeah.
We had a handful of return customers almost every week who I learned by name, and that was really exciting. We had a couple people who literally came every week. There was a husband who came every week to buy his pregnant wife some flowers, and he would often bring his kids because they wanted to pick out the flowers for mom, which was super sweet. We had some ladies that would buy a bunch of bouquets, and then they ended up telling like their daughters and other people and would give as gifts, which was really wonderful. And I personally got a lot of great feedback on how long the flowers were lasting, which ultimately is what matters to me, is that I'm selling a product that people aren't taking home and then are dying, and then I just never see them again because I didn't know that, you know, things were not lasting well. But I got lots of responses that, you know, it lasted 7 days, 10 days, that sort of thing. And that makes me happy because I'm not really that interested in just making the sale if it kind of ends up being a dead end because the product wasn't quality. So that gives good oomph and encouragement for next year.
Yeah, I mean, it was overall a very encouraging year.
Yeah, it was super positive.
For a year that we just were here a half year.
Yeah. Our half year here.
But, I mean, the plan really was to make the raised garden the success in terms of like a project.
Yeah.
Focused just on growing food for ourselves and less on flowers. The
Which
flower
went
field
really
was
well.
more like, how do you do this? How
Yeah,
do
it
you
was
plant?
an experiment.
Does it work? Do things grow here? And turning that into a decent chunk of sales for year one, year half.
We sold way more than I thought we would, so I thought it was a great success and good things learned without full devastation to take into next year. Like nothing was a complete failure. Even the pumpkins, even though it was awful, I still harvested like enough pumpkins to have the pumpkin display that I wanted in front of the raised garden, and the kids got to pick the pumpkins, and like I got something from it. So
sure.
Never to do again, but it wasn't like I never got
It's
a pumpkin.
not a labor we need to
add.
On
no. So I hope that was interesting. I hope that was an interesting review, especially for those of you that have been with our channel since the beginning and have been seeing all of these videos that we've recorded. Thank you for listening. We are very excited for next year. We will do a video in January talking about all of our expansion plans and stuff that we're going to be doing, including moving the flower farm location on the property. So look forward to that video. Give us a subscribe, and we really appreciate you following along as we start year 1.5 of our flower farm.
I'm winning.
Bye.
See you guys.
About 20 minutes of that was us arguing about what year we're on, but other than that, I think we went really well. So